A forklift. It does not like the tree's romance. It is ruining our lovely beach with its hateful tires.
なんということでしょう。機械を止めてください。あのカモメには家族がいます。
It ran over one of the gulls. Such bloodshed. Turn off the machine. That gull had a family.
Everybody's thinking about me, but I feel alright. Everybody's out again, but I feel alright.
So here we are at last, the long-awaited, the critically acclaimed by this point, Control. And yeah, it's alright. It's decent enough, if you like that sort of thing. No, don't get angry. I was just joshing with you, Chief. No, it's decent enough. I like it. I don't love it, though. And I do love Remedy Games, the developer. Remedy Entertainment, I should say, the developer. When it comes to their third-person action-y games, I tend to really enjoy them. I loved Alan Wake. Genuinely adored Alan Wake. In fact, I want to play that again. And I actually really liked Quantum Break. I thought that was great. And I know that's not a mega popular opinion. In fact, you can use what I just said there to discount all my opinions on this and future work. Those of you who already haven't done that. I know a lot of people didn't care too much for Quantum Break, but I genuinely thought it was great. And this is... it's not great. It doesn't mean I don't like it. It doesn't mean it's not a good game. It doesn't mean it's not a laugh. But it's... If I were to rank Remedy's most famous games, I'd have Alan Wake and Quantum Break, and then I'd have Control by a fairly significant margin. But it speaks to Remedy's quality as a developer that doesn't mean the game is bad by any stretch. So it's a third-person action game. You've got a gun. Don't worry about that. You've got a magic gun that can take on different forms and regenerate its own ammo. So you've got that, but that's not the real draw here. The real draw is picking things up and throwing them at people using magic powers. Throughout the course of the game, you will unlock a suite of mental abilities that the protagonist Jesse has access to, but ultimately, it's all about picking things up and throwing them at people using telekinesis. I've seen comparisons to Psyops, the Mindgate Conspiracy, if you remember that old PS2 game, and there are some comparisons to be made, not just in terms of gameplay, but tonally as well, to Psyops, or to a lesser degree Second Sight, but it's not really about accessing a wide array of psychic abilities, especially because launching objects at the enemies is so effective, and you can upgrade it to be even more effective, to the point where the power to, say, raise a shield to protect yourself feels unnecessary. In fact, I was playing the game fairly defensively at first, trying not to get hit, trying to hide behind stuff, and wasn't having too much fun with it. And once I stopped giving a crap about that, because every enemy you kill drops health, so once I cared less about taking damage and just zipped around the battlefield, picking things up, flinging them, and popping off shots with my magic gun whenever I could, I had a lot more, significantly more fun with it. You settle into a nice rhythm of dodging, picking something up, throwing it until your energy runs out, then using your gun until the bullets run out, then going back to throwing stuff, back to the gun, back to throwing stuff. There's a real nice rhythm you can get into, especially with some of the bigger, more hectic fights. There are other abilities as you progress. I would have shown them, but the footage I recorded of that had a stupid overlay added to it that I must have pressed a button to get. But you can raise a shield by dragging concrete up off the ground. You can levitate. That's a fairly late game power, and you can seize control of enemy mines if you weaken them enough and turn them over to your side to fight for you. That's pretty fun. I'll do that here and there, but again, the real core of the game is tossing. Just tossing as much as you can. And Control is really in its element when it's all about the fighting. That's when it's at its strongest. If you walk into a room and there are tons of enemies, you're probably gonna have a laugh. Now, the combat can be repetitive to the point where there are diminishing returns on that entertainment, but I did spend almost all of yesterday playing it, and I can't say I got truly bored, so it certainly got something going for it. However, in between the fights, that's when Control gets rather weak. First of all, and this is the real mood killer for me, I just hate the game's level design. Sorry, I just can't stand it. The fighting is really cool. The big rooms where fights take place in are pretty neat. the samey corridors in between them with not a lot to do and rather drab brutalistic architecture to look at, not so much. I do not like it. I hate navigating this game's world. I find it tiresome, I find it a slog. Even when you unlock fast travel points, I don't find them conveniently placed half the time. And the in-game map is piss poor. Does a terrible job, as far as I'm concerned, of showing you where your objectives are, especially if it's in a multi-floored area. The maintenance department, the game is separated into different floors of the Federal Bureau of Control building, and the maintenance department is awful. I absolutely hate it. The only saving grace is that the various samey corridors and sprawly maze-like parts of the building have a lot of signposting, and the signage is way more useful and effective at telling you where to go than the actual in-game map is half the time. I've played a lot of games over the years, therefore I've looked at a lot of maps, and Control has one of the worst ones I've seen. The story is a disappointment as well. There's a lot of potential there to have a game taking place in a shady government-style building full of conspiracies and strange phenomena. It clearly takes inspiration from the X-Files, and I want to say there's a lot of inspiration taken from the SCP Foundation. Now, there have been games based on that website, the SCP Foundation, the idea of a secret place where all the weird, creepy stuff is. And every now and then, you will see shades of that. There's one area where you find a guy who's trapped behind a cell staring at a refrigerator, and he says, like, no one can take their eyes off the refrigerator. And the guy who was supposed to take over his shift hasn't turned up because of all the weird stuff going on in the building. And you have to sort of find a way to fix that for them. And that's clearly, that's got shades of one of the most famous SCP entries. Of the monster that if you don't look at it, it moves. It's sort of like the angels from that Doctor Who thing, the Blink stuff. I don't know, I don't watch Doctor Who. So every now and then you see shades. When you see weird phenomena, like you see a glass door and behind it is a Christmas tree, and you just know that something's up with that tree, but you don't know what. Every now and then you see shades of that, but for the most part, the enemies are just sort of glowing red zombies, which the protagonist calls the Hiss, which I think is a cringeworthy name. It's just glowing zombies. You never actually fight weird things. You get over the weirdness pretty quickly because for the most part it's, you know, the enemies are quite generic. It's just glowy red lights and zombies most of the time. And the actual really intriguing stuff, the X-Files type stuff, the classified stuff, that you might find in a game like this is relegated to little side areas or in-game documentation, just hints that there are more interesting things going on than what you're actually getting involved with. The protagonist as well is as dull as ditchwater, performed really nicely. The voice acting and the motion capture and everything is great, as one would expect from a Remedy game, but the actual writing behind the characters is so lacking. The protagonist, Jessie, has no personality whatsoever. All she does is react to the plot. She's just a walking plot device in her own right. She's got this inner monologue with a magic voice in her head, which I think we as the players, we're supposed to feel like we're in that role. But because we're supposed to be in that role, there's no actual relationship between her and that voice in her head, even though we're supposed to believe one's there. And I don't believe one's there because it's just her talking to herself. I'm supposed to be the one she's talking to, I suppose, but at the same time, I'm meant to believe that she cares about this voice. She cares about this force that's inside her that's protecting her. And I don't give a crap because I've been given no reason to give a crap. And that's unfortunately par for the course with a lot of the game's writing. The story I don't give much of a crap about because it's very generic motivations with zero personality to it, and that's a real shame. And those are the two main sticking points. As I say, there's diminishing returns on the combat as well, as fun as that can be, because once you realise that it is just really effective to throw, shoot, that gets into a pattern that some may find quite boring after a while. And I didn't find it truly boring, but I did find it less exciting the more hours I put into the game. But that is still when the game's in its element. That is still it at its best, is big rooms with lots of enemies and you're just chucking stuff about. I also like that if there aren't free items in the environment to throw, if there aren't like many chairs or fire extinguishers or you've thrown them all, you can just rip chunks of concrete out of the floor and throw that. I think that's a nice little touch. And visually it's great as well. The lighting's really nice, the explosion effects and the various physic effects are really cool, especially when you're done fighting and you just see concrete and detritus everywhere. There are some performance issues though on console at least. I played it on PS4 and every now and then if there's a lot going on, if there are a lot of explosions, especially if you see monsters fighting allied characters, sometimes there are like NPCs that can fight the enemies as well. That's when you'll see some significant slowdown. Not enough to kill the game, not enough to really ruin the experience, but every now and then you will just encounter a battle and just be like, oh Christ, well that slowed the hell down. And it'll fix itself as you free up resources, I suppose, by turning a lot of the moving parts into dead on the floor parts. I can think of a good way to describe that just then. But anyway, that's Control. I do think it's good. I did have fun with it, but it's fun that carries a lot of caveats. And some of them really got in the way of my enjoyment, like the navigating the world and just that. A plot so dull, it bordered on annoying for me at times. Especially at the beginning where it starts off vague, but the character talks as if it's stuff I should know. Never do that, video games. Don't talk to me like I should know stuff when you've deliberately withheld stuff to reveal later. It's just annoying. But anyway, I do want to... We'll close off positively. It is pretty good. That's Control. Pretty good. Far from my favourite Remedy game, but I think a lot of people will have fun with it. Obviously, a lot of people loved it. I don't quite see where the love comes in, but I liked it. I quite like Control. There you go.